As film students at the University of Gloucestershire, we always felt that our films lacked something. So when we were given the opportunity to make a documentary, we chose to push the boundaries a little and try and cover a topic which no one had really explored. Tim, our director and ideas man, decided that a great topic would be Lundy Island, a holiday destination he hadn't visited in 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I'd been there with my family a few times when I was a kid, and the island itself was just a really strange, unique place, and the community was quite different from anything I'd ever come across. So I thought it would be a great idea to make a film about it.
It all sounded pretty exciting, but in order to film we needed permission, something that the National Trust weren't so willing to give. But we didn't really care, so we booked a trip and drove to Hartland Point. Some of us were looking forward to the peace and quiet. To be honest, it was the helicopter ride that we were most excited about, as none of us had been in one before.
When we first landed on the island, everyone was really excited about basically getting the opportunity to film such a small community on such a remote island. The weather was really nice, the locals were really friendly, everything was looking up, and pretty much all of us were looking forward to spending the next 4 days here.
When we arrived, we made our way to our accommodation, a 19th century lighthouse, which just so happened to be next to a graveyard. The curious thing about Lundy is that only about 20 people live here at any one time. All of these people are employed by the National Trust to maintain the island as a tourist attraction. From what we saw, this involves pulling pints and driving quad bikes, although obviously there's work to be done on the farm. We attempted to get interviews, but the staff weren't exactly very welcoming. So I've just been told by the National Trust staff that we're not allowed to film in the tavern or any of the staff here, so it all seems to be a bit secretive. I don't know what that's about, it seems a bit unwelcoming for a tourist destination, but we're going to be equally secretive and see what we can do without permission. So let's see how that goes. The next morning, determined not to get disheartened by the lack of cooperation, we filmed some of the island's diverse range of wildlife. Puffins are the main attraction, although we were unable to find any. However, we did manage to track down some animals such as sika deer and seals. Despite being told to stay away from the buildings, we wandered inside the empty church, which has seen better days. Unsurprisingly, there are no weekly services, as there's no priest on the island. The castle, meanwhile, is still in full use as accommodation, and has some spectacular views over the South End lighthouse. Thankfully, there is one shop on the island, which meant we didn't feel too far from home. It sold everything from Lundy stationery to frozen peas. Without any noise or light pollution, it seems as though time has stood still on the island, and it's a harsh contrast to life in the city.
We tried to organise some interviews before we went to the island, but that didn't seem to happen. So we decided instead just to go to the island and talk to people normally and just approach them. But they really didn't seem to like us. They didn't want to have anything to do with us. They wouldn't talk to us, wouldn't help us out in any way. But we found one guy and we thought, you know, we'll just approach him, just be friendly. But he just really, really didn't like us, and he was just very rude and told us to go away, and it's quite scary.
Shine the torch there a minute.
Charles, walk up to him. Okay, what we're going to do, guys, listen. Everyone listen, right, we're going to walk up there. Charles is going to greet him. Hello, we're from the University of Gloucestershire.
You're right. I'm just wondering what you're burning. Just wanted to know, like, what it's like on the island. But, I mean, if you're not willing to participate, that's fine.
It's just to turn around.
Alright, thanks for your time, I guess. Sorry for bothering you. Thanks a lot.
You alright, mate? Oh, shit. Oh, mate, I think he's just been sick. so cold with fucking cheeks.
Yeah, I'm just a friend. It's a sort of trip we've organised as university sort of buddies, I guess. Have you got like a note section? Because the thing is, the island was quarantined like a month ago for gastric conjunctivitis. They put cheerful music on the NHS Direct whole service, just to keep you happy.
That night, Liz and Ricardo fell ill, and we just had to get some drinking water. So we headed into town. It was a gale force wind. We had no electricity, and we were knocking on people's doors, and just no one was answering. So we finally went back, and there was a little cabin next to ours. We knocked on their door. They finally came out, and he offered to go into town and get some drinking water. So we finally had some drinking water. So we lasted that night. The next day, we went into town, and everyone on the island seemed to know that we'd been ill the previous night, so I'm guessing word travels really fast.
Filming the next morning without Liz and Ricardo, who had been our designated camera operators, was really quite difficult because we still had all this equipment and only 3 people to lug it around. The weather was atrocious and we hadn't had much sleep, and we decided we just couldn't film with 3 of us. I can't think. A rustic charm. Oh, chicken just jumped the fence. What the hell? I didn't do it. They did it again. God. Maybe they're allowed to do that.
Should we tell someone?
No, because they just blatantly did that. Maybe they're allowed to do that.
Okay, we're filling in an illness report form. Just saying what symptoms we had and what food we've eaten and general things like that.
Vomiting, yep. Diarrhea, yep. Abdominal pain, yep. Others,
Boredom.
yeah, boredom.
I'm good.
I'm glad you find our pain very amusing.
The fact that Ricardo shut
and puked at the same
Those
time.
forms are just so... Oh, God.
They are the most
They're really rigid,
tedious.
like, yeah.
Simple forms by Simple Islanders, eh? We learnt from on the NHS Direct line that nowhere covers Lundy Island. The NHS doesn't even know where Lundy Island is. And therefore, yeah, we were screwed, basically, if it was anything worse. Luckily, it was only a 24-hour virus, but still, it wasn't pleasant.
24 hours of hell on this crap island.
Going home. Excited. There's a slight chance that we might not be able to fly today because wind speed has picked up a hell of a lot. I think it's 23 miles an hour today, so we'll see how that goes. But if we do get off the island, it's probably going to be a really rough ride, and to be honest, I'm looking forward to it because that sounds like fun to me. Okay, so yeah, you'd best pack that away now, Mike. One thing we learned from our short time on the island is why there are only 20 people living there. There isn't much there, apart from wildlife and a few old buildings. This really explains why the island never developed. Our unfortunate experiences on the island left us feeling quite unwelcome and bitter towards the rock and its inhabitants, so we welcomed the helicopter when it returned to pick us up. None of us plan to ever go back, and certainly not with cameras.